Welcome to the Quantum Biology Collective podcast, where we break down the practical strategies of this emerging science, starting with healthy light habits and going wherever the quantum superhighway takes us. This is your host, executive and life coach Meredith Oak, with a quick reminder that podcasts are conversations, not consultations, and definitely not medical advice. We're here for informational purposes only. To follow up with our amazing guests, please do check out the show notes. And to stay in the loop with the QBC podcast, join our email list, also linked in the show notes. Most of us would like our healing journey to be the way we would like the stock market to be, which is to constantly go up in a nice, gentle, upward line. However, for anyone who spent more than 5 minutes working on their health, on their wellness, on a recovery from any kind of illness or condition or addiction, anyone who's done that for more than 30 seconds knows that's not usually the way it works. Our healing is a nonlinear process. And our guest today gives us some really, really crucial insights into why that is. Dr. Calvin Ng is a chiropractor. He works with applied kinesiology, which is harnessing the wisdom of the body to answer questions. And he works with a technique called neuro-emotional technique, the neuro-emotional technique. So he brings a very interesting level of understanding to the healing process. And we had a really fun conversation that I think you will enjoy. He also is, of course, a proponent of optimized circadian biology. Otherwise, he would not be here. But he does bring in some other levels as to why we might hit roadblocks on our journey when it feels like we're doing everything right. We're doing all the things we're supposed to be doing. Like, why is this happening? So if that's you, and who isn't in that situation sometimes, you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And of course, I would like to mention our brand partner, Bond Charge. They make health and wellness products. Andy and Katie Mant are the founders. They create and test everything themselves from their home in Perth, Australia. Bondcharge.com, and you can put QBC for a 15% discount when you hit checkout with any of their products. So here is my conversation with Dr. Calvin Ng. Enjoy. Dr. Calvin Ng, welcome to the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. I'm delighted to meet you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Right. So one of the things that I love about your work, and we were just sort of briefly chatting about this before I hit record, is that it is very holistic in the true sense of the word, in that you tend not to get lost in the weeds in any specific area, but you are continuously drawing in from many different areas: emotional health, mental health, eating the right food, getting the right light. All of these different pieces come together. So tell us a little bit about your journey and your approach to health.
Yeah, my journey started my journey into holistic health started when I was young, and my mom was, everybody called her the health nut, health freak, and she was, regulating what we ate. She was educating us on why we shouldn't eat certain foods, and what we should be doing. And even till now, my mom is 74 this year, and she works 7 days a week. She gets up, she goes to her little restaurant in San Francisco, and they open at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and she gets home around 9:30, 10 p.m. at night. And she's been doing... So for anybody who's complaining about burnout,
Yeah,
but she's not burnt out, she's not burnt out, but she works 12 plus hours a day. And I think to her, it's not work. She doesn't consider it work. And to this day, I'm very surprised. Before, when I was a kid, I didn't think much of it. I just go, that's just what you do. You're at the shop 7 days a week. And now I go as an adult, and I work, and I have my own business and things like that. I go, wow, that's incredible. Like, I don't know how my mom does it. I don't know if I can do it.
No, that's astounding.
It is. So the incredible strength and, vitality, the energy that she has is amazing. And it's funny because the shop itself attracts people, not random people, but it attracts the locals. There's a community there, and she's kind of built that up. Our family comes by, our family friends would come by. And if there's anything going on, and if my mom's sick, if my dad's sick, or if we need to if she needs to leave the shop for any reason, there are people who would come in and not get paid. She has no employees, and help out and run the shop, and business as usual. The shop doesn't make a whole lot of money, but it doesn't matter to her because she's there as this is a way of life. She enjoys it. And I think of her when I think of the word like holistic health, because, well, number one, she watches what she eats, and she's taught us that. She's very active. She's the oldest of in her family, of all her siblings, and she's in the best physical shape. And it's because she's walking up those hills of San Francisco all the time, and working, and squatting, and just not being afraid to get her hands dirty. Um, and she has tons of energy, very resilient, lots of lots of capabilities. Sometimes I come home after I haven't seen her in months, and we'll sit down, we'll chat, and we'll go till 2, 3 in the morning, and I'm here barely keeping my eyes open. And she's just like going and going and going and talking and having a great time. And then she'll get up at the next day and go to the shop at 8:30 and do it all over again. So I'm continuously surprised by my mom, and I learn a lot from her, more so now than I did in the past. And I think that really sparked my journey into health. I was in my neighborhood, in my community, in my family, in my peer groups, my school. I was pretty much the first one to not drink soda, maybe the only one. I remember at parties or function, adults would be like, "Hey, what do you want? You want some soda? You want some 7 Up? You want some whatever this is, or Coke?" And I go, "No, I just drink water." And they're like, "Why?" And I was like, "I don't know. My mom says it's bad, so I guess I'm just not gonna. I don't want to do anything bad to myself." And so that's the premise. It's like I didn't want to do anything bad to myself. I wanted to feel good. I wanted to have energy. I wanted to do something that was good for me. And I didn't care how good it tasted or how pleasurable it was. I think I valued the sense of health. And maybe because my parents are older, um, they had me when they were 43, and I I watch some parents and I go, that's amazing that you can, like, ski with your kids and go on these trips and do all these fun things. And like, I never really had that. Not at all, actually. So I valued a sense of like longevity and health. And I wanted to study that more. And it became even more apparent when my father went through his health crisis. My dad worked a lot as well, even more so, except I don't think he really enjoyed his work, and it was a grind. So naturally, the stress really deteriorated his body. So much so, his first diagnosis was liver cirrhosis, which is end stage liver disease. And we went to UCSF, top hospital, and they told us, Western medicine, right? They told us that there was no hope. There's nothing we can do to regenerate his liver to help him get healthier. His only hope was to wait till he gets sicker so that he climbs ahead of the line to get a liver transplant. And the other option would be to do a live donor, which means he takes half a liver from a live donor, which would be like me, or my sister, or somebody with the same blood type. So I felt, I felt really trapped, and I felt like there was, I questioned how little options we had in healthcare and why that is the case. And because of the community I was exposed to, um, I go, well, what about like Eastern medicine? And they said, well, there's no studies, there's no, there's just no proof that any of that works. And that's not the standard of care. So because of that, it's really risky, and we don't suggest that, and it probably won't work for him. And so it turned me off, and I wanted to, when people tell me to not do one thing, it makes me want to do that thing even more. So I just dove down and I wanted to study about natural health, vitamins and herbs. And during that time, it wasn't like what it is now, what we know. And I really wanted to take a deep dive. And so that sparked a lot of my interest and my journey of going down that path. And so as my family members, like my cousins, were pursuing their careers in medicine, so I have medical doctors in my family, um, PhDs. My sister is a PhD psychologist. My other cousin is a psychologist. I was like, all right, I'm gonna do something opposite of you guys. And I really liked health and healthcare and fitness and wellness. So I really just stumbled my way into chiropractic, and then from there I stumbled my way into a technique in chiropractic called applied kinesiology, which is talking about how to help the human body from a physical, biochemical, and emotional level. And then from there led me into all the things we know about now in natural medicine, functional medicine, biohacking, um, and beyond. So that's sort of like my quick nutshell of a journey.
Amazing. Well, I love how you've, yeah, like pulled all of these threads together into your practice, into your approach, into the way that you communicate on social media. Everyone should follow Calvin on Instagram. He's got a great feed on there. And you're not like, as I was saying before, you're not like down a rabbit hole on any one thing. You really bring it all together. So I'm curious, when people come to you, um, I would imagine, when you work in the natural health space, your clients are to a certain extent self-selecting because you're getting people who are willing and wanting to seek out a natural health practitioner. So I would imagine that there are certain things that your typical patient would understand, that nutrition matters, that some kind of that exercise matters, some baseline things. What are you noticing that people are surprised by, or that they're not taking into account, that is having a big effect on their health? Assuming they've
Their
got some of the basics in place.
Yeah, their emotions,
Mm.
the underlying machine that really drives us, that really governs us, the system that controls everything inside our bodies, right? Deep within the nervous system, right? The autonomic nervous system, the subconscious mind, the things that we have essentially not much control over. We have an influence over them by doing certain things, but we have very little control of what our nervous system does. So that is one of the biggest things. I I recently went to Europe, right, Italy, and it's interesting. And I was actually thinking about it this morning as I was making my high protein breakfast. And I was looking at it, and I go, where do we come up with this whole low carb, no carb, carbohydrates are evil. They're the ones that are doing damage because it turns into sugar and insulin, and it creates diabetes and metabolic syndrome. So we shouldn't have carbs, or we should limit our carbs. And I remember, like, I remember telling people that too. And I go, how did that even come to be? Because when I was in Italy, I was eating carbs all over the place.
Oh
Everybody eats
yeah.
carbs because I go, when I was in Italy, I was frying an egg and I go, wait, in Italy, they don't really do that. They don't have eggs and avocado, and they're not having a breakfast like what I'm having. What do they have? They have a croissant in the morning. They have pastries in the morning. And I don't see people walking around with obesity in Italy. I don't
Mhm.
see people with skin issues, right, where they look sick. And they could have sickness and illness later on, but it's just the general consensus of when people travel to Europe is, oh yeah, they seem healthier here. They seem happier here. They seem like they have less stress. They're definitely less fat. There's definitely less obesity there. So we got to question this whole thing about carbohydrates, right? As I am. And then go, well, like what is that? Is that really because of the carbohydrates, or is it really because, there's something else going on? And I go, yeah, well, in America, you can eat some carbohydrates, processed carbs and things like that. You can eat a croissant, but then you're also getting toxins in it, right? Because we don't in America, we have chemicals that we haven't banned, and we allow these chemicals to enter into our food system. So that's one thing, right? But just think about the lifestyle. In Italy, it's I go out in the morning and I want to find breakfast. It is hard. Yeah, I mean, everything is closed. People are not open till 10, 11, sometimes at noon. And then they at 1 or 2 they take a break, and then they open up in the evening again. I mean, the whole work culture is so different. So here in America, our lifestyle is, all right, we wake up and it is a race to get out of the door, get to the office, get to your work, get to your kids to school, and then you just go hard for the whole day. You have a little bit of a break. Sometimes you have 30 minutes, sometimes you have an hour, sometimes you work through that lunch, and then you continue to go until the evening, and then you go home, and it's a race to cook dinner, right? Get everything right, and help your kids with homework, get yourself situated, go to sleep. And if you're working on your own business, then you're doing even more work at nighttime. So, and we have this like pride in this hustle culture, right? Working hard, right? Go, 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 working overtime. And so this stress that we're under, this lifestyle that we're living, right? This fast paced lifestyle that our bodies are not designed to be in all the time, this stressful state. I mean, I think this is really the cause of disease. Because yeah, you can eat carbohydrates, but if you are going to have stress in your life, if you're going to live in a stress state all the time, in sympathetic dominance, in fight or flight mode all the time, that's going to cause way more damage than a little bit of glyphosate, in your croissant. So I think that, we have to really change this whole narrative or understand more, right? And I think the more that we understand about our lifestyle, the more that we can help ourselves, live a better life. So that's one big thing, right? Going back to the nervous system, is that people walk into my door in sympathetic dominance, in a state of fight or flight. And I would say that is the number one cause of deterioration in health and dysfunction of their cells and dysfunction in their organs, is constantly living in a state of fight or flight. And when I mentioned the other thing would be the unresolved emotions.
Mhm.
Sometimes that could be a driving force as to why they are living in a state of fight or flight, right? They could be working a job that they hate. And then the simple solution is, well, why don't you quit? Why don't you go do something other than what you want to be doing? Well, subconsciously, there could be emotional trauma about being told what to do, about being judged, about being persecuted. That could have happened in the past. That could have been something that that person saw as in their childhood, and they've held on to that. And they go, I know that in order to keep myself safe, this is what the subconscious mind is telling you. In order for me to keep myself safe, I have to do XYZ. And that's a belief system, right? That's us limiting beliefs. So these unresolved emotions, these emotional traumas that we've dealt with in the past, that we hold on to continuously, will dictate our lives, will shape our belief systems, will create limiting beliefs for us, and will create these little barriers. They're like the little guide rails when you go bowling, right? They come up and it's like, well, you're only deviating from this certain area, but you're going to hit your goal, you're going to go down this path, and there's really only this one way. And we are so unaware of that, right? Sometimes we believe that, we are free to do what we are, and we are totally able to do whatever we want as human beings. However, we may not understand that we get in our own way, ourselves, our own body, our own subconscious nervous system, to keep us from danger, to keep us from some sort of hurt.
Yeah.
It keeps us from getting what we want, from doing what we need to do, and seeing a bigger perspective, right? And so when we don't see a bigger perspective, then we're only going to do one or two things. We're only going to do what we know. And I think that, especially in the US, that's very true, because there seems to be only really one way of living that is great. You're hustling, you wake up, you meditate, you say your affirmations, and then you you go do great work, and then you get some sunshine, and then you fast, and then you do your exercise, and then your cold plunge, and then your sauna, and then you have an entrepreneurial business, and then you're making lots of money, and then you're on social media, you're crushing it on social media. I mean, there's a lot of pressure, isn't there? Like, in our world, in our modern day society.
Yeah, a lot. And I think your examples are good, because sometimes we even transfer that on to the practices that are meant to be restorative and meant to improve our health, which I think is your point, right? It's like, if I'm being obsessive about the sunrise and losing my mind over EMFs, and I'm just reassigning, even though I might be taking some practical steps that are theoretically going to be good for my health, if I'm just like reassigning that flight or fight energy to being really, really good at health, there's still going to be, we're still not going to fully resolve, which is what I think I hear you saying.
Yes, absolutely. I see this all the time, because I do have patients that come in and go, I'm doing this. I'm eating low carb. I'm intermittent fasting. I'm cold plunging. I'm sauna. I'm dry brushing every day. I've been doing these cleanses, and I've been getting in sunlight. I've been grounding,
Yeah.
and it's just like, yeah, they're all
I have
great,
a really, really, really long list, and I've been doing everything on the list, and I don't understand why I don't feel better.
100%.
Yeah.
And I just go, you're stressing me out, you know?
I get it. I relate.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm guilty of that too, which is like, I want to do all the things, and I
Hmm.
want to do all the things that are theoretically good to keep me well. Um, and I might get stressed out if I, not take certain supplements, or if I go out and I eat and I go, oh my gosh, I don't have my binders and my digestive enzymes, and like, I know what's in this food and whatnot. And to just liberate yourself and give yourself, the freedom to go, to trust your body. I think what a lot of it comes down to is trusting your body. And it's a relationship, it's a partnership, right, between your conscious mind and your subconscious. and going like, you know what, I'm gonna do all the things that I need to do to keep you well, but there are things that I'm not gonna be able to be on top of, and I hope that you're gonna be able to buffer that, to be resilient against that. That's really the goal, right? But how do we get there? And I think discovering all these things about natural healthcare as we are today is great. But it's important to not get too deep into the weeds of one singular thing, right? I have my criticisms on everybody, right? Some people are very into DNA and methylation and all that. And I just go, okay, so we supplement for all your missing SNPs and methylation pathways and whatnot, and give you all the antioxidants that you're missing, that God didn't give you. And now what? Like, are you
Yeah.
just gonna be on these like 18,000 things for the rest of your life? I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
not really a way of life, right? Again, I go back to how other cultures, other places in the world live, and I go, like, they don't have to do all that, right? But I feel like in the West, in the US especially, it's almost like this like salmon swimming upstream. It feels like that. It's like you have to constantly be doing something. And if you're not doing something, you're going to get washed out, right? If we do what everybody else does in our modern Western culture, well, we're going to become obese. We're going to have higher chances of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, Alzheimer's. That's the trajectory of where we are normally going. That's like the
Yeah.
guide
If you
rails.
just go with the flow, go with the mainstream, whatever, that's the path. Yeah.
Right. So I encourage everybody to like be a rebel, right? And do the opposite things of what everybody else is doing. We have to turn the tide and go, like, we're in the minority. I am still astonished how, I live in Southern California. It's like a, you know, hipster place. People are in like trendy things, right? There's like there's good water you can find. There's yoga places everywhere, um, and there's like gluten free and all this type of stuff everywhere. So we have a community that's pretty strong here, but yet I'm still astonished how clueless so many people are. Not to their own faults, but it's breaking out of this matrix, this programming, right? That is on us currently all day long, since we were all born, right? We're being programmed in some sort of way. So it's either we figure that out and try to deprogram and program ourselves, or we just continue to fall victim to whatever is default out there.
Yes. And I think, what you're speaking to about the hustle culture and always like doing, doing, doing and going, going, going. And then we reinforce that with the type of environment we live in. And I'm of course gonna talk about our lighting environment, right? Like
Yeah.
we come home and we're meant to be entering a restful, restorative time, and we have LED bulbs on telling us it's solar noon, and we're looking at screens and we're missing those environmental cues that are meant to be slowing us down. And then we become addicted to that. And I think light's such a nice way in, because so what's the antidote? It's like, go for a walk outside, like keep your house a little, dimmer and redder and less intrusive to your body. But what I find is, what you're speaking about here is that, I'll speak from my experience, is that there's a part of me that like pushes back, right? It's like that restorative time feels like uncomfortable because we're so used to always being in go mode.
Yes.
Um, and I always joke that like I got another dog because I would just stay on my computer instead of going for walks. And we moved next to the forest preserve to make it super easy. I have all the access to nature that I need. And but I would still have that like inner impulse. And yeah, so I think this idea of like it's not just like what we put in our body or where we work out, but it's like what environment are we living in, and is that supporting what you're talking about in of having a more like a healthier nervous system and a
Yeah,
subconscious that's not freaking out all the time.
absolutely. I I'll speak on this, which is, and again, I go back to the greatest thing that happened to me was seeing the world. Growing up in the U.S., I never went outside of the U.S., so I never really knew what was out there. But like through media and through what you hear through the grapevine, you just think that, there's certain places where it's like third world, and the other places uh, that are very restrictive and hurts their citizens and keeps them enslaved
Yes.
and trapped. And so you hear
Well,
of all
so the
these things, and
programming you're talking about, I had that same experience. It's like, I was like, oh, we've been programmed to feel sorry for everybody else except
yes,
us.
oh, 100%. 100%. And so you just believe that, like, where we are, what we're doing is like the greatest place on earth. Um, and again, that's not I'm not saying that I'm not grateful for living in America and being an American. But I'm merely pointing out that, we have to rethink like who we are. We have to rethink how we are compared to the rest of the world, right? And gain again a bigger perspective. Um, but I'll give you I'll touch on this, which is when I was in Italy, I had like a 2.5 hour, maybe even 3 hour brunch with like a chef owner. We were in Positano, and there was this like cafe there. I think it was called Positi. And it was a small shop. There's probably like 4 tables in there, and it was a chef owner. His girlfriend was the hostess, and we had a lovely time just chatting it up with them, learning about what's happening in their neighborhood, like how they live, how they work in the summer, and in the winter they just go off to Southeast Asia or do nothing, literally do nothing, because things shut down in Positano, which is the Amalfi Coast. And I go, wow, what an interesting culture. And he said something. He said, today's slow. I don't really care. It doesn't matter. I just take it day by day. And what I love is just having a place like this, and I get to connect with people and talk to people, and do something that I love, which is cooking, and cooking in a simple way, and delivering people, giving people delicious food. And I can enjoy this amazing view. It's like, it's so simple. It's so simple. And what he's not fixated on is like the money, right? And in modern culture, we are so fixated on the money, the success, whatever gets tied in with money, right? Money can buy you a lot of freedom, can buy you things that are pleasurable, can buy you some safety, right? It's the attachment over something where we believe that that is helping our survival. And in our society, money is that thing. If you accumulate more money, you can have greater access to healthcare, you can have greater access to shelter, right? You can have more mobility in the world, you can have generational wealth, right? So there are, quote unquote, potentially less worry, or this idea, we get sold on the idea that, more wealth, more money that we create, that we make, equals a sense of security, equals safety, equals I could be less worried, I could feel potentially happier, I could be more at peace, right? Have we ever walked into the woods in the middle of nowhere, go to the beach, right? And it was just you and nature. And you're like hiking in the mountains, and you just stop because you need to take a break, you drink some water, you enjoy the view, and then you stop. And it's like almost like dead silent. It's still. There's a sense of calm, a peace, and there's this feeling that you just cannot describe that you're getting, right? This energy that you're tapped into, right? This God-like experience. And that requires no money and no wealth, and we can tap into that. It's like our inherent birthright. So we don't need to we don't need money essentially to have peace naturally. But we do need money to have peace in our society, this matrix, the society that we've created. And I don't have a good solution for it. I'm not telling people, because I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go off into the wilderness and try to like hunt, myself and like reverse engineer everything. Like I don't want to do that. I like my creature comforts. I like my modern societal, advancements in technology. So I don't have a good solution for that. My only thing is how can we just blend some of that, right? How can we understand like what's my stress about? For my dad, I'll use my dad because I don't want to point any fingers here. My dad, right, is a typical provider type, protector type. Very go, go, go. Till this day, 74, still got a little bit of anxiety, like anxiousness. Like he's ready to go. If there's something you give him to do, like an assignment, he will not sleep until he gets it done. Like it's very effective. And that's why he's been able to build a good business and make good money and have a good life, from a monetary standpoint, right? But at the sacrifice of his health, right? He had to sacrifice something. So we can, for him, making money. I remember when I was little, I would ask him, I was talking to him, and he goes, making money gives you all these things. It gives you security. It gives you education. It gives you a good life, right? This is highly important, right? And for him, he would tell me, he's like, it's hard for me to sleep. And I go, why is it hard for you to sleep? I just close my eyes. I was little. I just close my eyes and then I go to sleep. And he's like, it's not that simple. I was like, why is it not that simple? And he goes, because I think about a lot of things. And I go, what do you think about? Well, I think about my job. I think about money. I think about the future. I think about making deadlines. I think about people not being happy. I think about my employees quitting on me. I think about not being able to pay my employees. There's a lot to think about. And I go, wow, it's like a lot of money problems. It's like, yeah, money is very important. And I go, like, now when I'm older, I go, who created money? We created money. Like, we created our own problems. And so this unconscious attachment towards money, it's not because of money, it's because of what money means, right? Nothing in life matters until we give it the meaning. So many of us in our modern world are killing ourselves because we're trying to chase peace, freedom, safety, security. And I go back to my new friend Antonio in Positano of Italy, and I go, this guy lives a very simple life. He doesn't need a whole lot. He doesn't need to have generational wealth. And he seems really content with everything. And I look at my mom, who is in her little shop in San Francisco, probably making like $300 a day. That's not even net, by the way. That's just gross revenue.
Okay.
And but somehow like surviving it
Yeah.
and having like the time of her life.
Yeah, and she's happy and healthy.
Oh my gosh. It's like we've I,
And we're here like chasing. Where is it? Where's the thing that's going to make me happy and healthy?
I would tell you that I live in a pretty in Orange County. We have there are a good part of Orange County is affluent, and and the type of service that I provide, where our clinic is, it's in an affluent area. So we attract that type of clientele. And I am so surprised how some of the sickest people are have money. They don't have financial worries. They have health worries. And it's really interesting, right? So, that saying of health is your greatest wealth, I really believe it. Absolutely. But if you constantly have money issues, which means that you have safety issues, which means that you're in fight or flight, you're an animal out there and you're out in the wild and there are predators all around you. And every day you have to fight to survive. And it's hard to find food, it's hard to find shelter. That's going to be a really stressed out animal. You're not going to be able to survive in nature for that long. You're going to be hunted. So that's how I think we inherently feel as organisms in nature. But I also think we're also doing it to ourselves collectively. The power is in the people, the power is in the consciousness, in this like quantum space, this quantum collectiveness of people is like, we can really shift our intelligence. We can really shift our perspective differently and show up differently in the world and continue to have these conversations. They're hard because, again, I don't have the solution for it. I can only point out the problem right now. Um, and so I don't know exactly how to fix it. So I go, you know what? I know there are stressors. I have stressors, and I have to go visit nature. I have to ground myself. I have to, see the sun. I have to get sunlight on my body. I still have to do these things to like maintain myself. I have to do what a normal
Right.
organism is supposed
Yes.
to be doing in their environment
And
to
yeah,
keep
what
myself.
we're designed to be doing, which I think, you know, sends those safety signals to us as as much as we create lives that feel unsafe and stressful. Yeah, when we do those things you just mentioned out in nature, it's like there's some, on a subatomic level, we're being reminded actually we do belong here.
That's a really good point. I sometimes people will go like, well, it all sounds really daunting and scary and like dark and it's like depressing sometimes to even think about. And I go, you know what? The panther that's out there in the wild, right? He experiences stressors. The rabbit that the panther is hunting, right? The rabbit's experiencing stressors of safety and security. And they go through their moments of stress. But you ever watch an animal and they just kind of sit there, right? I think and I go when I go for a hike and I just sit there and take it all in, I think that's what the animal's doing, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think animals, right? They go through their bouts of stress, but they also go through time where they can take it all in. They can feel that peace, that serenity, right? The tranquility of nature, of their environment. And that is balancing out whatever cortisol, whatever stress hormones that their body's releasing from running away from something or hunting something, in the past. So I think it's a good reminder for us to look at, our counterparts. Again, the same way how us as Americans need to look at other parts of the world to see how they're living. We need to think of us as like human animals and go, what are the other animals doing? What are the insects doing? What are the dogs doing? What are the predators doing? What are the birds doing? Right? What marine wildlife is even more wild. What are the whales doing? Like, we have to look at what is happening in nature and not get so caught up with the society, the modern life that we have created for ourselves. That's just a human thing, you know. So, but we have this matrix, we have this society that's within a natural world, right? So we can't forget that. It's not like the natural world is within something we created. No, 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 no. We created something on top that's like layered on top in only certain areas. So it's important to look at that whole everything collectively as a whole, as a holistic picture. So going back to the first question you asked me about, like, being holistic and thinking holistically, it's like that's where the mind really needs to go to, right? It's looking at everything in life, everything in nature.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting really deep, but it's so true. And the way that we've constructed society, we're putting up walls between us and nature. And it's like I would like to live in a house with a roof and all the rest of it, but we've forgotten, where we come from and what we're a part of, and it's ruining our health.
Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned that you see sort of light as the medicine of the future. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, we everything that we see, is created by energy, right? Or everything has energy. Everything is energetic. Everything is part of this energetic field. So, and light is just a form of energy, right? And we see and we can pick up light. We can see those wavelengths through our eyes. There are wavelengths and frequencies of energy that we don't see. So therefore, that we shouldn't be so naive on things that we don't understand about or we haven't understood yet, and forces that act on us that we're unaware of. But I think of light as the future of medicine because, well, number one, we're designed to live in sync with the light cycle uh, of our nature, right? Um, and again, I just think of our counterparts, our animals, right? The crickets, for example. At a very specific time, usually because of light and everything, the crickets awaken and they start chirping, right? And then at like maybe 4:35 a.m., right, you can hear the birds waking up. There is just there's clock, the circadian rhythm, this schedule, if you will, to nature. And if we don't follow it, then we're going to be going against it, and we're probably not gonna we're probably gonna create more issues for us. But this schedule is based on light. It's based on when the sun comes up, when we have light, and now in our technologies that we have today, we can discover that, so when the sun comes up, and we have now this is our first exposure to blue light or the blue spectrum. We release cortisol in the body. We stimulate like our dopamine. And this makes us feel good. This makes us want to seek things, right? Because you want to go out, have energy to go. Maybe I should go and build myself a little shelter. Maybe I should go and hunt for food. Maybe I should go explore, okay? Because again, it's helpful for my survival. And then at night, when the sun goes down, there's no source of blue spectrum. We have some infrared that is radiating from the earth, from rocks, because the sun was radiating on it and it gives off some heat. We have a little bit of red light, right? That if you still see a little bit of the sun. So that red light signals to our bodies, tells us that, okay, nighttime is coming. Let's drop your cortisol down. Let's raise your melatonin, right? And melatonin helps you with sleep. Anything, if your cortisol rises, it's going to counteract melatonin. And really at nighttime, you really shouldn't be going out there. You, as not being a nocturnal animal, you shouldn't be going out there and hunting or looking for shelter anyways. You just should just rest and go to sleep. So boom, the red light. And so it's very simple when we think about it that way, right? And is that there's a clock, there's a schedule to nature. Just like the seasons. We can't switch up the order. You can't go like, I love summer so much, I wish summer was like forever. And you can't do that, because after summer comes fall. After fall comes winter. And then comes spring. And then comes summer again. It's like you can't switch up the order. So we can't switch up the order. We can't mess with that. In nature, in the natural, in what's happening naturally. So we have to respect it. And again, it's about the thing about swimming upstream, the salmon swimming upstream. How much are we going to fight against it? So now, now what we have is technology, blue screens, artificial light, fluorescent light. So what you're doing is, okay, after the sun goes down, you go inside and blasting ourselves with like all this artificial light going on, and then and a lot of them have a lot of blue in it, especially our screens, and they're so bright. I tell people, you ever realize how bright your screens are? You can go out in the sun. You ever go out and you look at the sun? People go like, why would I do that? I go, I know. Why would you do that? You wouldn't look directly in the sun. But you take your phone out and then you go and in the sun, and you can still use your phone perfectly fine. I mean, you ever realize how bright and concentrated those colors are? They're so concentrated that you can see even in broad daylight. So it just shows you like what it's doing. Potentially, we have to think about what it's doing to our brains as those signals are going into our eyes. But at night, we're supposed to get that red light signal and then less blue light, and all of a sudden we somehow traveled from one part of the earth to another part where it's the morning, and then we're just radiating ourselves with blue light, stimulating our cortisol, right? Especially as our whole day was filled with stress. Now we're artificially creating more stress. Right. So again, this is going back to the whole sympathetic dominance. We live in a stress state, and this is really why we're sick. I believe it. The glyphosate is a problem, okay? The chemicals and the Clorox and the chlorine is a problem. The tap water, the parasites, like all those are problems. But listen, like we could be a lot more resilient to those things if we are not constantly living in a state of stress. Stress from the feeling of safety, of insecurity, that we constantly have to chase peace and safety through making money. The stress of our light environment, okay? The stressors from the toxicities and toxins and toxicants that we're exposed to. We're always under a state of stress. And that's really why we're not thriving as human beings.
Yeah, no, it's really true. And I think we've all sort of, most of us listening to this and participating in the health and wellness space are on some kind of personal journey ourselves, right? And I think the theme of this podcast episode is really important, which is that like we can put all the pieces in place to be perfectly healthy. We can eat only organic. We can do the right movement. We can have all of the right light environment and do all of the things correctly. But if we're not also putting ourselves into restorative mode and understanding how to not be stressed out, and even realizing what that feels like, I think for a lot of people, we've normalized it so much that we don't even, I'm like, I'm not stressed out. This is just what it feels like to be alive. Right. And I had that journey. So I had chronic fatigue, right? Where I would I'd have to like lie down on the kitchen floor sometimes because I was just so tired. I couldn't make it to the couch. Right. And it was like, I was drained. And then, did all of the things, including meditation and spiritual work and all kinds of things for years. And then the final piece was the light, which really, because it was the final piece, that's what worked for me. And I started to get all my energy back. And after about a year, I was feeling really fatigued again. I'm like, I don't get it. And I was told to get an aura ring, and I was like, I don't want to get an aura ring. I don't like that. It's weird. And then it's going to tell me to exercise more. So I get the aura ring. I start wearing the aura ring, and it starts giving me these messages. And it's like, you didn't have enough restorative time today. It's like, you didn't rest enough today. You're not going to be productive tomorrow. You did, and literally every single message from this thing was related to the fact that I was so excited to have my energy back that I just took it all the way into a deficit again, because I overextended myself. Because that's just sort of what I knew how to do. You just go flat out until you got nothing left, until you don't have anything left. And so that was the next thing that I had to learn to sort of work through. We're all on a journey here, but to what you're saying, it's that subconscious programming. It's like all of these pieces have to at some point become part of the healing journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. You put it well there, which is, I think for a lot of people, it's including myself, it's this non-linear path, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a constant discovery, and you have to like learn and unlearn and learn and unlearn and discover more. And then the more you discover, and part of the reason why I speak in so like sometimes I feel like I speak in so like abstract ways is because it's like I just don't know. Like the more you learn, the more you're just like I feel lost, and that's
Yep.
essentially what Einstein said. Is like the more you learn, the more you just don't know, and so we have to really just go. You know what? Sometimes it's about giving up some of that control. Sometimes it's about surrendering a little bit, and going like, I can't micromanage every little thing. I just need to put myself in the best environment possible and design my environment the best that I can. And over time, allow that environment to keep me well. I think really that's where we should be heading. And again, probably in 3 years, there's going to be something new. But for now, I think controlling our environment that way, right? Shaping our environment in the best possible way, and go, you know what, I'm going to surrender to that environment, and I'm going to have some ups and downs, but I want my trend to go up.
Yes. Yeah. And that's it. It's like, if we're trending in the right direction, it's like I always say to my clients, like, if you keep doing what you're doing now, where are you going to be in 6 months? Where are you going to be in 5 years? Right. So it's like the compound result over time of the actions that we're taking today, the environment that we're living in today. Like, what direction is that headed in? And then at the same time, surrender. There's so much we can't control or know. All right. So what are some final thoughts that you have? We'll bring it back to a little more, your concrete health strategies that you see that are most effective with people.
Like I said, the number one, the unresolved emotions, is such an overlooked piece. I think that's huge. I think we are able to mitigate a lot of that with nature. I think being out in nature and living life naturally gives us time, right? It gives us some time so that we can understand a little bit more about these stressors in our life. But in our fast-paced society, we just don't really have the time for anybody, not only yourself, right? But if you're a child and you go through something emotional, and you and your parents are too busy to help you get through it, right? Because children don't understand. So it's important for their parents to help to teach them, to help them understand, and to guide them through stressors. But if their parents are too busy, if they are going through their own stressors, if they're unaware, if they're not tuned in with their emotions, we could be completely missing it. And so that child, right, would have then an unprocessed emotion that lives on. Okay. Now, in nature, I believe that a lot of that stuff gets resolved on its own because, well, like I said, you can sit out there and you can have just that you have that moment of taking it all in. You have that sense of peace. You have so much of like that type of energy that balances out the stressful energy. Okay? So there are a lot of things in nature that are really good for us, that almost like overly showers the things that are bad, right? But in modern society, it's the reverse, right? Um, there's a lot of bad, there's a lot of stressful things. So, number one is what I do on a day to day basis is helping people understand some of those unresolved emotions and helping them process those. And that's through the work of neuro-emotional technique. One of my favorites. It's life-changing. It allows people to really understand a lot about themselves and their self-limiting beliefs and behaviors and whatnot. And then also helps them with going forward with where they want to go in life, with what they truly want, right? Because some people, what I mean by that is people might want one thing, but they may not be fully subconsciously congruent on it, meaning your conscious mind wants something, but your subconscious does not want it for whatever reason. And we got to figure out what that reason is, what that roadblock is. Okay. So there's people that come in and we do a lot of that type of work, and they discover like a whole new world afterwards, right? Where they rethink life, and it's been amazing to watch people's journey. Because I would remember when people come in and they're telling me about all these things. There's one example I'm thinking of where, this young lady, she came in and she's having all these issues, all these stressors, and lost in life and everything. And she's living at home with her parents, and they don't have a good relationship. And then I go, well, what's the solution for you? Like, what's a practical solution? Well, I got to move out. Okay, well, why can't you move out? Because it requires a lot of money. I don't make a lot. I have all these barriers. Blah 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 blah. And I go, okay, well, all right, those are all your roadblocks, maybe, potentially, I don't know, but let's help you open up the idea of even like moving out of the house. So I have her say things like, I'm okay with moving out. I'm okay with living on my own. I'm okay with building a new life for myself. And so many of those simple things, right? And you would think that, yeah, everybody should be okay with that. But surprisingly, so many people are not okay with something that is good for them. And how I determine that is I utilize muscle testing, because muscle testing is testing your nervous system's response to something, some sort of stimulus, whether it's like I poke you here, or I say a word, or I flash an image, or tell you to think about something. It's a stimulus. And I want to see how your nervous system responds to a stimulus. So if you were to put lemon juice in your mouth, your nervous system would respond by salivating and giving you a sour face, right? And so I want to know how you respond to the statement, I'm okay creating a new life. I'm okay being healthy. I'm okay making more money. I'm okay living with more peace. I'm okay taking care of myself, putting myself first. All these things that just seem very basic. But I am astonished. I am surprised every day how people just have roadblocks. Their arm weakens, their muscle test weakens, their nervous system does not respond well when they say, I'm okay putting myself first. And I go, see, that's the problem. How can you heal if you don't even prioritize yourself? How can you heal if you don't even want it? How can you heal if you can't even see how you can make those changes? And that's why there are barriers. That's why you tell yourself all these excuses of, I don't have enough money, I don't have a good job, and I have all these limitations, and I live in this place, and this is the reason why. And so we end up becoming a victim to our environment. We end up becoming a victim to our circumstances. We end up giving our powers away. And my whole thing about health is about, it starts in the mitochondria, and the mitochondria helps us create energy, right? Or I should say transform energy, because energy is neither created nor destroyed. So it helps us, it gives our bodies energy. The mitochondria, it's in almost every single cell except for certain ones. But that's the one that we really need. And we need to have energy in the body. In Eastern medicine, that was called chi, right? In nowadays, in functional and natural and holistic and Western medicine, modern medicine, we call it ATP. And that's what the mitochondria makes. But if we're if we're not congruent with making energy, if we are doing things unconsciously that are limiting our energy or even giving our energy away, then we're not helping ourselves, are we? So that's like step number one, or sometimes step number two.
This is so interesting. So it's almost, so what you're saying is like our subconscious beliefs that we may not be aware of. So like be like, I'm okay being at peace. Of course I'm okay being at peace. I want to be at peace. That's why I'm here, right? But then you do the muscle test where you can see if the body is responding in congruence to that statement, and the person goes weak, meaning that their subconscious mind is not congruent with that. So you want something intellectually, you are subconsciously stopping yourself. So you're walking around in this state of incongruence, which is stopping us from making enough energy. I never
Yes.
thought about it quite, and I didn't like put them together in that way before. That's super interesting.
And I tell people this, when people come in, I give them this example that I learned, which is going back to the lemon. Is like, if I tell you to picture a lemon and we cut it in half and you see the juice oozing out of it, right? And the pulp, and I tell you to stick your tongue out and I squeeze this lemon, squeeze all the juice on your tongue, fresh lemon juice, and I rub this lemon on your tongue back and forth. There's no lemon in the room. I don't have a lemon in here. I don't think you have a lemon there, right? People listening probably don't have a lemon anywhere. And, but you might notice that your tongue is starting to salivate,
Yeah.
right? And we can create these physiological responses in the body just simply by thinking about it, looking at it, right? And manifesting it, if you will. So it's highly important to understand this, because if we have self-limiting beliefs, if we have that are based from our traumas, our macro and micro traumas, then what we're going to do is all our cells are in unison. Every single cell is going to be aligned with that one thing, going like, well, why would you want to move out? You shouldn't move out because there's danger if you move out. That's what all your cells believe. That's what your nervous system is instructing your cells to believe. Remember, your nervous system is the computer. It's the software. The nervous system controls everything. You can't have a bowel movement without your nervous system. You can't speak without your nervous system. You can't even blink or have tears without your nervous system. Everything is governed by your nervous system. It is the master control. And probably, most likely, and yes, we know this, is that our nervous system is connected, right, to this quantum field, to this bioenergetic field that we're all living under, right? The quantum universe, the quantum field. So again, our nervous system controls that. So when your nervous system has already decided on an outcome, which is, we should not move out of this house, it is dangerous out there, right? I'm gonna get you sick. I'm going to limit you. I'm going to suck all your energy. We're not going to make enough energy for you to want to like get out of here. So you're unhappy, you're depleted, you're fatigued, you're sick, and you're stuck. And that's what so many people are living in today. And we tell them, well, you need to take methylated B vitamins. You need to eat beef liver. You need a cold plunge. You need a sauna. You need a dry brush. You need to eat organic. You need to stop eating carbs. You need to eat more protein. You need to take this, that. Right?
Yeah.
But yes, those are all good. Those are all helpful. But if you don't address that emotional component of being truly aligned with getting healthier, of helping yourself, of starting a new life, of going towards a life that you truly, truly want, if we don't address that, then we're just going to be spinning our wheels. And I see that happen over and over and over and over again, is that people are spinning their wheels until they get their emotions resolved, until they get fully aligned from the conscious intellectual state, right? From that level. And then there's unconscious, subconscious, right? Everything has to be in order, has to be truly aligned. And that is like a chiropractic philosophy. I think of it. I don't think chiropractors think of it that way. But you go to a chiropractor, what do they say? I'm gonna get you aligned, you know?
Yeah.
So like I like to tell people, I'm like, I need to get you aligned, like physically, chemically, and emotionally aligned. Everything needs to be aligned. Like you want to go this way, like we got to get you okay with actually going that way.
You need all of the wheels pointed in that direction, not just one of
100%.
them. Right. And so we can do all of these practices with our nutrition and our supplements and our whatever to help to support our mitochondria. But if our internal system is sending the signal, we're in danger, don't move forward, we're cutting off the capacity for that mitochondria to really fully function.
We're so gullible as creatures. We believe so much, and it's so easy for us to believe. And that's not a negative thing. It can be. We can certainly see that it can be a negative thing, but it's actually not. There is a very good side to it. We can create, we can manifest, and I'm not talking about manifest as in like, oh, I'm going to think about no weeds in my garden, I'll never have to pull weeds ever again. Like, no, that's not going to work. But what I'm saying is like, it's like envision your life, like envision yourself. Like, what does that look like? What do you want to do? What do you want to create? I think that's the cool part about modern society is that, and our advancement so far is that, we can envision these things. You know, when my parents immigrated into the U.S., like back in the, I don't know, 70s, 70s, that was probably not a possibility for them. That was a very low possibility. It was not. It was not something that they were thinking about whatsoever. They're not thinking about, let me create my dream life. But actually, I would argue that they were, because they had an idea of what they wanted to create. They were sold the American dream and they strived for it. And all cells of their body was like, I'm going to move towards that. Right.
Right.
So,
but what you're saying that we tend to do is create a vision and not check in if the cells of our body are aligned with it. And so we've created like a disconnect. So we're not getting there, or we're getting sick, or we're losing our energy. And in some way, it's because we don't actually believe in that goal.
And yes, 100%. And what is disconnect in cellular function, in cellular signaling? What is disconnect? It is chaos inside the cell. When we lose connection, when we lose order, we create chaos inside the cell. and that creates inflammation. So when people go, inflammation is the root cause of all disease, and I go, no, it's not. It's a function. It's a result. There's something in it, right? But what is the cause of inflammation? Well, the cause of inflammation is like toxins, EMFs, my light environment. Yes. But what do all those things create? Those create a disruption in cell signaling, a disconnect. What is chiropractic philosophy? Is that I need to keep your nervous system connected. And if I'm not connected, if there's any interference in the nervous system, if there's any disconnect in the nervous system, then health and disease and dysfunction will manifest. So the goal is to get you to be aligned and connected and fully congruent in the body so that the flow of your nervous system is functioning well. And how we express health is through the expression of our nervous system. So when we are aligned like that, when we get fully congruent like that, now we can actually like shift our life. And going back to that person who couldn't move out, well, we started clearing her on a bunch of things and clearing a bunch of emotional traumas, micro traumas, macro traumas in the past, and self-limiting beliefs. It doesn't have to happen right away, but then like months later, it's like, oh, like her boss calls her up and goes, hey, can you house sit for me? You know, in this like mansion. Can you house sit for me for like a month? I'm going away. Okay. And that's her like first exposure of like getting out of the house. And
Suddenly
then
life
it's like
presents her with an opportunity to practice
100%.
this thing she wants to do.
Yeah. And then she goes, and then her boss likes her. She does great work. And then it's like she's making more money, working less. Crazy. Working less, making more money. And now she's able to move out and like live her own life. And it's like, you know, it's like, it's clearing the fog, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it was already there. It was already there. When I never visited Italy, Italy was already there. People were already living that way. Antonio was already living the life. But I like went out of my way and like went over there and discovered like a new world. And I discovered how differently people live. And I always heard about it, but I got to truly experience it. It's different from, you know, like that person, my patient, who goes like, yeah, I understand. I gotta like, you know, get out of the house and do all that, and let's start looking for apartments. But it's like until you get to really feel it in your nervous system, because again, you can intellectually think about it, but it's not deep enough sometimes. But it's like if you get out there and go, oh my gosh, like I truly know now what people talk about when they go, I go to Italy and I have celiacs and like I ate all the pasta and all the pizza and like I didn't have a reaction. And I go, that's mind blowing. You know, and I always knew that. And then when I went, I go, let me go try this pizza. I ate a whole pizza by myself. I'm eating all this pasta, this croissant. And I go, wow, I didn't need any enzymes. I didn't get bloated. I didn't feel brain foggy. Like, this is amazing. You get to like really feel it. And when you feel it in your nervous system, you know, that's something that we have to really tap into, is the feeling. That is all subconscious. That is all neurological based. That's something that we don't necessarily have control over all the time. And that's why it's important to get out in nature so you can feel nature. So you can get that experience of, wow, it is breathtaking. It's majestic. Look at the views. Look at the wildlife, right? Go and put your feet in the ocean. I live like so close to the ocean and it's beautiful. And you go there and you just feel the sense of peace. You get in there and it's because you're feeling it, you're in it. And so I can't look at a picture and do the same thing. I can't put a VR machine on my face and do the same thing. It's similar, but it's not the same. My entire nervous system has to be part of it, part of this collective experience. And so many people are like, I want this thing. I want to be healthier. I want to be wealthier. I want to be, this or that. I want to create this life for myself, but it's like internally they're fighting so much inside. They're fighting their mom inside. They're fighting themselves. They're fighting their dad. They're fighting people who have persecuted them. They're fighting like people who don't even know them. They don't even know.
Yeah. The politicians.
And
Right. Like what we were
yeah,
saying earlier, it's hard to take that stuff seriously when you're walking through the woods.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter anymore, because all that it's manufactured.
Right.
When you're in nature, the reason why we feel so peaceful is because it's a belonging. We feel like
Yes.
we actually belong there. Not we think we belong there. We feel we belong there. That's the difference. And one of the things I want to tell people is like, we got to get ourselves out of our own heads and start feeling and start, learning about our intuition, which sounds like etherical, but I go like, I'm not into the woo woo as much, like, like the planets aligning and like, whatever. Like, I don't understand all those things. I don't knock it. It's hard for me to understand. So I leave it up to other experts. But like one thing that I tell people is like, oh my gosh, like your nervous system, you have 5 senses. And there's probably more that we just don't know about. But you have 5 major senses. Go touch the earth. Go breathe the air. Go look at, nature, something natural. Go look at the natural light. All right. Go taste real food. And that's what we really need to be doing, is to go like, how do I feed my nervous system the right things? And it's not a B12, it's not a glutathione.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think
Yeah. It's like,
light is one of those things where it affects our nervous system so much more than a nutrient can. And that's why it's important to control our light environment as well.
yes. Yeah. I think, yeah, the healing through our light environment in collaboration with a practice like what you do with your clients of clearing out limiting belief systems. It's like a beautiful combination because you're supporting the nervous system from multiple directions, giving it that foundation of safety, and then also bringing it into alignment. So, okay, one last question before we wrap up. When you talk about helping your clients or your patients to clear the field and bring their cells into congruence and alignment, how does your technique work? Is it physical combined with inquiry, or what does it look like?
It's all of it, really, because we're prompting. We're saying words. We're saying phrases. We're allowing the conscious mind, which is where you can actually go like, oh yeah, like what happened to me? What does this mean to me? We allow the conscious and the subconscious to be on the same page, right? And so in our work, where we have discovered some of these trapped emotions are in certain organs. And that's through the work of acupuncture and Eastern and Chinese medicine, is that certain organs in the body, organ systems, relate to certain emotions. So very specific emotions like anger and frustration and resentment tend to reside in the liver and gallbladder,
Mm-hmm.
right? The kidneys and bladder are in what's called the water element in Chinese medicine. And that's related to fear and paralyzed and dread, contemplated, wishy-washy, back and forth. Lungs are related, and large intestine are in the metal element, related to grief and sadness. Okay, small intestine, adrenals, pituitary, sex, reproductive glands. Okay, and heart and thyroid. All the endocrine systems, all the endocrine glands are related to feeling lost, vulnerable, abandoned, deserted, muddled instability, which is like chaos, right? Feeling paranoia. So sometimes when people come in and they go, A classic example would be they come in and they go, my thyroid. I've been told I have Hashimoto's and I have hypothyroid. And I go, okay, all right, let's take a look at it. And we'll go through our testing, we'll review labs and go, okay, indeed, you have an underactive thyroid. What are you doing for it? Well, I'm on like a thyroid medication, whether it's like levothyroxine or MP thyroid. And I go, okay, great. Are you taking supplements? Yeah, I'm taking some supplements. Okay, like let's figure out if there's a biochemistry component to why the thyroid's not working. So we utilize the muscle test because, again, the nervous system knows all. The nervous system knows everything. If I ask you and I go, hey, what percentage of digestion are you at an hour after your meal? You tell me, I don't know. I feel bloated. And then, but your nervous system is like, hey, we still got about maybe like halfway. We got all this protein that we haven't digested yet. We're not making enough stomach acid. We actually need more bile. So we're actively trying to make bile. Your nervous system is just like running. It's like a factory, right? And it's just dictating everything. And your body's like firing on all cylinders, like trying to digest that burrito that you just ate, right? And you're going over here like, so it's very important to understand all of this. And so what we'll do is we'll muscle test to ask the nervous system, essentially. We'll muscle test and challenge the nervous system. What's the thyroid doing? Oh, the thyroid weakens. So there is something that's not inherently right. But do you need more? Do you need thyroid tissue? Do you need a hormone? Do you need a pharmaceutical? Do you need an herb? Do you need a detoxify? Do you need emotional work? Those are all the things we challenge on the body, right? Does it relate to something else? This is a part of like root cause approach. It's like, well, if your thyroid's not functioning, well, what if I put like some chlorine in front of it? What if I put some iodine in front of it? What if I put some fluoride in front of it? What if I put other toxins that could be affecting the thyroid? Does that cause a change in muscle test? Does that tell me information? And then if it does, then I would go, oh, there might be a toxicity there. There might be a deficiency there. And we might need to cleanse that. If there's an emotional component that shows up, right, that changes the muscle test response, then I go, well, there's an emotional component to this. Like, would you want to dive into it? And they're like, yeah, sure. And I go, well, the thyroid relates to these emotions. It could be muddled instability. It could be paranoia, right? It could be feeling lost and vulnerable and abandoned. And we'll say those emotions out loud and check the nervous system. We'll check the muscle test. And if it shows up being, let's just say, paranoia, then I go, okay. Well, let's go through and figure out what you might be paranoid about, that off the top of your head. And then might go, well, when I think about the word paranoia, it reminds me of my finances because I'm worried about the world. I'm worried about like the U.S. like and not having petrodollar status and like inflation. And I can't pay my bills, and then like I can't feed my kids. I'm like, okay, all right, cool. So let's go with that, right? Just a sense of like lack of your finances being affected, right? And we keep going through and deducting, right? And getting down to a very bottom thing, a core thing. And it can go from, well, why do you have so much stress about it? And it's because, well, like, and it goes back to like age like 7. At age 7, when I went to school, I discovered that so many people had new clothes to wear. And I was wearing clothes that were patched up. I had hand-me-downs, and we didn't have enough money to buy me new shoes. And I always felt like an outcast, and I felt like I didn't belong, and I got made fun of. And so that really stuck with me. And so because of that feeling, that emotion, that memory of that feeling, now every time you turn on the news and it goes, well, your stocks went up or down, your inflation went up or down, right? These things went up or down. Every time you go to the grocery store and you look at a price tag, right? Every time you think about finance, every time you look at your bank statement, every time you got to pay bills, every time you got to pay rent, it triggers that little part of that 7-year-old that feels like an outcast, that feels like she didn't belong, that feels like she deserves to be bullied, that feels like she's a lesser human being, that she's being treated differently. And she's trying her hardest to not put that on her kids or not put that on herself again. She's trying her hardest to run away from that. But how many of us are running away from our problems because we're living so far in the past rather than actually creating a future and seeing something new, right? Most of us are doing something to run away from a past without even realizing it versus creating a life that we actually want. And that is a disconnect. That is creating chaos inside ourselves. That's creating a mismatch. And so when that happens, we're going to create inflammation. And that's going to create thyroid inflammation. So it's our energy, our chi, our mitochondria that's influencing the thyroid is then being affected, is then being blocked, is then being depleted. And so now it shows up as low thyroid function. It shows up as high antibodies. And maybe because if you have low thyroid function, the body's like, well, kind of like if you don't use a muscle, right, you get atrophy. If you don't use a thyroid because it's being suppressed by your nervous system, the tissues there start to decay because your body's like, we need to use that peptide and protein for like your adrenals because you're always stressed out, right? So it's like moving and breaking down. And then in the bloodstream, we find that there's high thyroid antibodies. And then your doctor goes, see, I told you it was Hashimoto's because I'm a Hashimoto's expert. So you therefore have Hashimoto's. And that's the reason for why you feel terrible. And you got to fix the Hashimoto's. How do I do that? Hashimoto's protocol. Blah, 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 blah. Right?
Right.
But it all could have just stemmed from that 7-year-old, Yeah. So that is highly important. Who we are, who we are as kids, what we experience are so important. So when parents understand this, they have their kids come in and get NET, neuro-emotional technique done, and get checked and make sure things are clear. Because kids go through a lot too, especially in today's world. I mean, it's a rough world out there right now. It's confusing. So that's part of one aspect of what I do is like discovering, really why. Like I'm talking about root of the root of why they even manifested something like this in the first place.
Yeah, like why the thyroid and not the liver? Why the thyroid and not cancer, right? Like our body, what you're saying is our body has the answer.
100%. Because the difference between the thyroid and the liver are, I mean, let's go. You talked about subatomic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Protons, neutrons, and electrons. There's a cluster of them here. There's a cluster of them here. I mean, like, what's the difference? What is the difference, right? I mean, if we truly think, if we go to the people who think that B12 is going to fix everything and nutrition is going to fix everything, then we have that same logic, which is like, oh, this is just like protons, neutrons, and electrons. This is protons, neutrons, and electron. My eyeballs are protons, electrons, and neutrons. I mean, shouldn't we just apply the same thing and we just can fix everything? And why do we have this discriminatory, selective like diseases or disease patterns that show up in one place but not the other? We have to question that. So, if somebody has liver issues, could be could be anger, resentment, frustration. They could resent. They could be holding resentment with their spouse, with their parents, without even knowing it.
Yeah.
And every day, as they're home, they're reminded of that. It's just that constant low-grade stress that deteriorates you. It's not the high stress. As much as people go through like intense stressors, like veterans And people or what's happening overseas in the Middle East right now, like those are very intense stressors. Those are definitely very bad. But then you also have these micro little stressors, right? That are like, okay, it's like the drop of water. It's like the drop of water that then just like chisels and creates a mountain, like the Grand Canyon.
Yes.
That's what's happening.
That's
So
what's happening. So when we're talking about being truly healthy, we're talking about clearing our field. We're talking about going all the way to these root cause issues.
100%. Yeah, I think that they're highly, highly important. I think they become a little bit less important potentially if we, live more in accordance with nature, because again, we'll have more time to dissect things. We'll have more time to understand. We'll have more time to marinate on those thoughts, right? To contemplate, to ponder, to think about, to feel. We'll have the opportunity to feel. Nowadays in society, it's like your feelings need to be like in and out, right?
Yeah.
Because there's things to do. You're at work, you get offended. You're being offended by your boss. You hate your job. It's like people are like, who cares? We all hate our jobs. We're all being harassed. We're all being abused. Like, let's just keep moving so I can get my paycheck, go back home, watch Netflix, leave me alone. That's what we're doing. We're choosing to ignore so many of these deep issues. And they're small, but they're constant. They're every day. And sometimes every little thing reminds you of it. And when people are fed up with it and go, I want a better life. I want to heal myself. I want to get rid of my excess fat. I want to have more energy. It's like there's baggage associated with that where they can't even let go. And
what you were saying earlier about it being nonlinear, right? So sometimes on the path to getting better, it gets a little worse temporarily because we have to deal with some of this stuff that we've been like anesthetizing in some way.
I have a patient who, and people will find this interesting, but I have a patient I saw this week, and I've been scratching my head left and right with this guy. He is middle age, a little bit past middle age, and he was in a career that he resented, did not like, and he is now, and it's a good career. It's good pay. He's making good money, right? But he's just like, I don't want to go back to that environment because emotionally I know it's not good for me. And so he went to work at Trader Joe's, and just a very simple entry level job, low key, right? So his stress levels are down from job. His finance are a little tighter, but they make do. They can get by. And he's like, well, for this, like, I think for a year and a half to 2 years now, he has not touched any seed oils, processed food, super strict with all of that. Okay. Fresh organic foods all the time, right? And exercises, gets sunlight, does all the things, right? And for like the past few months, he's just been going through a hellhole of from hives, itchy skin, low energy, where essentially it's almost like like systemic infection in his body. And then his tooth, he has wisdom teeth, and finally they got like really badly infected, and he had to go to the dentist and pull it. And then after they pulled it, they had to go back in because it got infected. They had to go back in, and like there were fragments of bone.
He's like going through. He's going through it.
The ringer. He's going through the ringer, and he goes, I just don't understand. Like I'm doing all these good things. I'm doing the things that I think are good. But why is this happening to me? And he goes, it's interesting because I was never in tune with my emotions. I never got in touch with it. I never opened the Pandora's box at all to examine, my emotional health. And so lately, in these past couple of years, he's been doing that. He's been opening himself up. He's been part of communities. His partner, his spouse now, is also a therapist. So he's been exposed to that space and actively working on that. And I go, how much of this is like almost like a detoxification? It's almost like a breaking of like this breakdown of like all the things that have been suppressed for so long. And I equate that to some people when they do cleansing, if you give them some sort of a cleanse program and they just feel terrible because they're just unloading all these toxins in their body. The same way how when we get sick, if we poison ourselves, we get sick, where bodies are just dumping. So how much of this is just like dumping? And it's manifesting as something horrific in his body. And I go, I don't know. His name's John. I don't know, John, but I have a lot of faith, and there are things that I can't explain. There are things that are beyond me, beyond what I understand, beyond what anybody understands. And sometimes we have to surrender through and go through all of that. So, I have tremendous faith about that. But I shared a story because it's like, I don't have it all figured out. My patients don't have it all figured out. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
And especially, and what's important is, here's somebody who is doing all the right things that you would think about, textbook. And then he opened up like this emotional, he just like cracked open this can of worms. And then it was all hell's broke loose. So I am astonished by that emotional side of what I call the triad of health all the time, because I really believe that is probably the most important thing that we could be working on as organisms. And I think what allows us to be unique compared to other animals, I don't know, who knows, maybe in some rat colony somewhere there's like a rat therapist, but I don't know of that existing. So for us as human beings, I think what makes us unique is that we just have all these emotions and feelings, and I think we really have to get in tune with that, right? I think that's like our superpower.
I completely agree. And just, I will end on the word surrender, right? Like just surrender to what it brings, because it's not always a bed of roses. But I also have faith. I think John is on the path, and it's very interesting to me, right? It's like, he quit his job and went to work at Trader Joe's. Like, that is some high level commitment to changing your life and lowering your stress. And then he ends up in that situation. You just never know, but it's going to pass. And we're going to have you come back and tell us what happened to him next.
Yeah.
In the nonlinear healing journey of John in Orange County.
Yes, it's nonlinear is very good. And just like light is nonlinear.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Calvin. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I'm looking at some things in a new way, which is my favorite. So thank you for your perspective and your experience and your wisdom.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity and a platform and a space to just data dump like this.
It was fun.
It was fun.
Woohoo! You made it to the end of another episode. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploratory adventure into new realms. Your energy and support are building a different world, and I am so grateful to be on this journey with you. Take care and thanks.